Hi guys, we're going to start solving polynomials and I'm your host. Hi guys, Mrs. Henry. Now, I'm going to start by factoring. Remember, whenever we factor, we have to take out the greatest common factor, which on this problem is x. So I have x times x squared plus 1. And now we have to break this apart and set each factor equal to 0, because this is not a difference of squares because of the plus sign, so we can't do anything else. So x stays 0. Here, x squared equals -1. When I take the square root of both sides, x would equal plus or minus, the square root of -1 is I, and then I have 1, 2, 3 roots. My answer looks like that. See how that works? Are there any questions? If so, let me know. My next thing is going to be x to the 4th minus 64 equals 0. So x to the 4th and 64 are both perfect squares. So this is the difference of squares. So I have x squared plus 8 and x squared minus 8 equals 0. If you're sitting there asking, how did she get that? The square root of x to the 4th is x squared. The square root of 64 is 8. And one's positive, one's negative. So x squared plus 8 equals 0. And x squared minus 8 equals 0. X squared equals -8. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of -1 times 4 times 2. By breaking that down, I can easily see that x equals plus or minus the square root of -1 is I, the square root of 4 is 2, square root of 2. That's 2 of my answers. And then x squared equals 8, square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 4 times 2. So x equals plus or minus 2 square roots of 2. And there's my other 2 answers. I'm going to move to my next page of my notes because I have highlighted all the problems that I want to do. So I have 6 more I think I want to do. So I have x cubed plus 125 equals 0. And this is the difference of cubes. So I have x plus 5, same sign. Different sign, always positive. X squared 5x 25 equals 0. So my first thing is x equals x plus 5 equals 0. So x equals -5. Now over here, are there any numbers that multiplied together give you 25 and add together to give you -5? No. So we have to use the quadratic formula. Remember, the quadratic formula is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Now I'm going to play the simplification game. X equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 100 over 2, which becomes x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of -75 over 2, which becomes 5 plus or minus the square root of -1 times 25 times 3 all over 2, or x equals 5 plus or minus 5i square root of 3 over 2. 1, 2, 3 are my answers. Questions on that? X to the 4th plus x squared minus 42 equals 0. What numbers multiplied together to give me negative 42 added together to be 1 will be negative 7 and positive 6. So this is x squared and x squared. Now we break this down and solve. X squared minus 7 equals 0. X squared equals 7. Square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 7. Oh, wait. Mrs. Henry made a mistake. This should be plus 7, negative 6. So this would be there we go. There's my first two answers. Sorry about that. Then I have x squared minus 6 equals 0. X squared equals 6. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my answers. All right. So I have 4 more examples to do with you all. So now I have x to the 3rd minus 8x squared plus 16x equals 0. My GCF here is x. So what two numbers multiplied together to be 16 and added together to give me negative 8 will be negative 4 and 4. Ooh, negative 4 and negative 4. So x equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. X minus 4 so my answers are 0 and 4. I don't have to write 4 twice because that's a double root. Are we ready for some more? Two x to the 6th minus 10x to the 4th minus 48x squared equals 0. So I have 2x squared, x to the 4th minus 5x squared minus 24 equals 0. What multiplies together to give you 24 and adds together to give you negative 5? Negative 24 and negative 5. Oh, this is negative 8. Okie dokie. Now we have to set all of these equal to 0. So 2x squared equals 0, so x squared equals 0, and x equals 0. But that's a double root. So this will be 2, 2, and 2. So I have x squared minus 8 equals 0. X squared equals 8. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 4 times 2. X equals plus or minus 2 square roots of 2. And then I have x squared plus 3 equals 0. X squared equals negative 3. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1 times 3. And x equals plus or minus I square roots of 3. I'm wondering if this is easier for you all, so because you can all stop and start the video as this is easier for you. I have 2 more examples for us to do. So I have 3x to the 4th minus 2x squared equals 16. So we have to first put this in standard form. 3x to the 4th minus 2x squared minus 16 equals 0. So 3 times negative 16 is negative 48. So I have 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 6 times 8. Which pair is different by 2? This pair, and it's going to be negative. So I get 3x to the 4th minus 8x squared plus 6x squared minus 16 equals 0. The GCF of these two is x squared. The GCF of these two is positive 2. So I have 3x squared minus 8 equals, times. If I take those two out, I'm left with x squared plus 2 equals 0. Now I'm going to set both of these equal to 0. So 3x squared minus 8 equals 0. So 3x squared equals 8. X squared equals 8 thirds. And when I square root both sides, this is what that looks like. I'm going to come over here and I'll finish that one over there. X equals plus or minus the square root of 8 over the square root of 3. We multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. X equals plus or minus the square root of 24 over 3, which is plus or minus the square root of 4 times 6 over 3. So x equals plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 over 3. Wow, that was a lot of work. Now we still have to solve this one. X squared plus 2 equals 0. X squared equals negative 2. Square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1 times 2. So x equals plus or minus I square roots of 2. So I have 2, 4, and I'm done. Ready for the last one? X cubed plus 2x squared plus 5x plus 10 equals 0. The GCF here is x squared. I get x plus 2. GCF here is 5. I get x plus 2. They both have x plus 2 in common. And I'm left with x squared plus 5 equals 0. So x plus 2 equals 0. X equals negative 2. And then I get x squared plus 5 equals 0. X squared equals negative 5. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root. Negative 1 times 5. X equals plus or minus I square roots of 5. And there's all 3 roots. Let me know if you need help. Talk to you soon. Bye.